welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making this amazing 3D Captain America cake, but before we get started, I actually just want to go over 3 things. The first one is that this is actually a collab video, so if you love superheroes, then go check out these other amazing cake artists. We have
Venom Cake by Rosie's Dessert Spot, 3-Tier Batman Cake by Janie Sweets, Wonder Woman Cake by Cakes with Lorelie, Black Panther Cake by More Cakes Yes Ma'am, Wonder Woman Cookies by Very Cherry Cakes, and also don't forget to check out The Lovely Baker.
The second thing is that this cake actually took me about 3 days to make, so we're not going to be talking about every single little detail, so I don't want to be reading about a whole bunch of hate comments later. But the third and good news is that we're actually doing another 2 separate videos. The first one is talking about how to ice up a cake without using a crumb coat, which will actually save you a whole bunch of time. And the second one is talking about how to work and cut edible images. So go check out those videos and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get started.
Like I said, I made this cake in 3 days, but honestly, if you plan correctly, you can do it in 2 days. So for day 1, I baked the cake, made the shield, wings, and skyline. Day 2, I made the buttercream, stacked the cake, freeze, cut, and ice all my cakes. And day 3, I just put it all together. With that in mind, now we're ready for day 1. So for making the shield, you're going to want to roll out a thick piece of red fondant, about a ½ inch thick. Then I'm just going to cut out very thin strips of red, white, blue fondant and place a little star on top. Make sure that your rings are centered, because if it's not, then it's just going to be looking a little bit sloppy, and just try to get it as close as you can. And then, as you know, normally I would steam my fondant right now, but because we're going to give it a little bit of texture, we're actually going to be going back and painting it with some luster dust. We're going to be using blue, purple, orange, and green, and I'm not using brown just because I couldn't find my brown, and it wasn't until after I made the cake that I found my brown, and that was my fault. I didn't put it back where all my other luster dust normally is. We're not using brown today, but obviously if you have brown, you can use brown. We're just going to be setting this on top of something round. I'm using a measuring cup, but if you have something else that works perfectly well, just remember to put a piece of saran wrap just to make sure that it doesn't stick to the object. Once you have it colored to perfection, you're just going to set this aside and let that harden. Now we're ready to move on to the wings. So I did use a stencil for this. I'm actually just going to freehand it, but I'll try and link a logo or something down below if you guys really like stencils. But everything I could find online had like a lot more feathers, and I really wasn't looking to cut out a bunch of feathers. Again, I'm just going to be rolling out a piece of fondant about a ½ inch thick, and we're going to be making it about 2 inches tall and about 3 inches wide. I noticed that once I cut out one, and it's usually my right side that turns out a little bit better, then I flip-flop it and trace along the other side just so I have 2 pieces that are identical. Once you have that, then you're going to be sticking in 3 toothpicks. Then you're going to roll out a very thin sheet of gray fondant, which you will lay over the top of your base, and just going to trace that out. And I'm just going to try and go back and get some smaller details. Once this dries, then you can go back and pick up your silver pieces, take that off, and with some silver luster dust, I'm going to go back and paint my silver portions and steam the black fondant. Add in a thin layer of water and just stick that on top. Now we're ready to make our skyline. Don't do what I did. I actually made my skyline on day 3 instead of day 1, but I had made my cake topper a little bit smaller than what I was imagining. I ended up making a skyline for the background just so it didn't look so awkward without anything around it, which I'm not upset about because I think it turned out way better with the skyline. So for this one, again, I'm just gonna freehand it, whatever kind of tall and short buildings that come to your mind. My cake is a 6-inch cake, which means it's 6 inches wide, not tall. With this in mind, I'm going to be making my skyline about 5 inches wide. After I freehand my buildings, to give it more support, you're going to want to stick some in a little bit deeper than the others, just so it gives you more support on those taller buildings rather than it trying to break or flop over later while it tries to harden. Then you're going to roll out a very thin sheet of yellow fondant and just cut out a whole bunch of little strips and squares and then just place those all throughout your beautiful skyline. Now we're ready to cut our cake. So again, if you want to watch how to ice the top portion, I'll put a link down below. And for the bottom tier, we're actually just going to stack up our cake. And I actually put this cake in the freezer for 2 hours just to let it harden up a little bit. Because when you go to cut that cake and try to ice it, it's going to get really crumbly if you try to ice it while it's still soft. And if you're wondering why there's only one layer of chocolate, that's because my top tier was chocolate and I had a little bit of extra batter left, so we just gonna slap that other layer of chocolate right in the middle, just so it's a little bit taller. So when I go to cut my cake, I'm actually just going to pretend that I'm just cutting out a small slice of cake about the depth I made my shield. I didn't have a specific way that I was supposed to cut this, but looking back, I should have probably cut it a little bit thinner of a slice, just so it stuck in a little bit better. That's the only thing I would have changed. Just like my other cake, I'm not going to do a crumb coat. We're just going to ice this up straight, and it really doesn't matter if you get a little bit of crumbs in the portion that you're going to cut, because you're just going to cover that all up with a bunch of fondant and no one's going to see it. Once you have your cake iced, I'm just going to put that in the fridge to chill. Day 3, my favorite day of all, putting it all together. So you're gonna want to start out by making out those fondant bricks. And you don't have to use purple like I'm doing. Mine is a very dark shade of purple, and that's only because I'm trying to empty out a bunch of my colored fondant before it goes to waste. But honestly, use whatever color that you have. When you roll out your fondant, you want to make sure that you're rolling it out a very thin strip, because you do not want your bricks too thick because they end up looking really chunky. I promise you, you're not going to like it. Once you have it rolled out very thin, I'm actually going back over with a textured rolling pen. I'm not going to actually link this one down below because I don't really like this rolling pen. It's starting to break and crack and it's not a good quality, and I will never recommend anything that I personally do not like. Once you have out all your little squares, you're going to want to damp your cake with a little bit of water and stick those along the side of your cake. Don't mind me, I'm just actually sticking and unsticking and then re-sticking on all the bricks multiple times just to get the correct pattern that I want, because I just kept changing my mind along the way and had just to keep redoing it until I got it right. But once you figure out the correct pattern, you want to make sure that you are not leaving your cake out too long, because if you leave your cake out too long, it will start to get little bubbles in it and it will ruin your cake. So if you work slow or the temperature in your house is very warm, then I recommend doing it in increments. Put it in the fridge, take it out, work on it, and then just do sections at a time. If you noticed, I'm actually not going to go all the way completely around my cake. I left a big gap of actually where I'm going to be putting my edible image. It's not going to hurt anything. You can go all the way around or just leave an empty spot and work around it. It's completely up to you. We're not going to fill in the middle just because we are going to be putting our second tier on top, and no one's going to notice if there's actually bricks there or not. And once you get all the way around your cake, then I'm going to be going back around the top portion and adding in some more bricks. When I rolled out my fondant, I took all the little edges that were all messed up and kind of scrappy looking, cut those into smaller little pieces, the height of my little bricks, and we're just going to use this as the messed up torn pieces and stick that in the inside of where we cut our cake to give it more of a depth and textured look. So when we slide in our shield, it will look like the shield is later being crushed into the brick rather than just sitting on top of it. Once you have your base done, you're going to want to steam your cake. You do not want to put on any images or anything and then steam your cake because this will ruin your image. And once that dries, then you're going to take your image, add in a little bit of buttercream on the back of it, and stick it on the side of the cake. Once you have your image on the side of the cake, now you're going to put the shield in. So mine wouldn't stay up specifically by itself, so I'm going to cut a little bit deeper with my spatula and have it sticking in there a little bit, and I put a toothpick on the back of it just to hold it up a little bit because, like I said, I did not cut this narrow enough so it would slide in there. Cut them into little smaller strips again and put that on top of it. When you have it the exact way you want it, then you're going to take some dowels and put that in the base of your cake. And now we're ready to move on to the top tier. This one is actually going to go a lot quicker than the bottom tier. We're just going to be rolling out some very thin red and white strips, and with my little cutter, which I will link down below, which is very helpful to make sure that you're getting all the same width of a strip, then you're just going to cut and place along the side of your cake. Cut out a few stars and place that on the side of the cake. Once you have your beautiful cake done, then you're going to steam your cake and let that sit. And once that sits, then you're going to pick up your cake and stack it right on top. If I was going to be transporting this cake, I would recommend putting a dowel straight through the middle of the cake, just in case the top tier tries to move or wiggle or anything. Now for the final touches, we are going to add in our cake toppers, our wings, and for the cracks, we're just going to be going back with some black food coloring, and I'm just going to be freehanding some cracks along the side. And just a reminder, you want to make sure you're doing this after your cake has set. You don't want to be doing this after you have steamed your cake or anything because it will bleed and completely ruin your cake. And there you go, now you have a showstopper 3D cake sure to wow party. Don't forget to check out my friends' superhero cakes and their links down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.